Evil. Look at the dictionary. The synonym of the word black. It's always something degrading and low and sinister. Look at the word white. It's always something pure. I got this drink backwards the whole time. Pardon me, y'all. Yeah. Is that cool? Hey, this is the thing. Trying to get the gig. I can go all the way to the corner if I got move. You want to move over. Move over. Here? Yeah, like this? Yeah, so you can get in the middle. I'm like, okay. Let me see. Let me go line Papa. Get out your books out the way. Word. Look at that. You like that? Damn, one more. I get the K in. I'll try to. Just trying to get just a little bit. Put that down. Yeah, I mean, I don't smoke. Is there anything? What's that? What's this? You see none of that? What's this right here? You see that? In front of the K. Oh, okay. Nope, that's perfect. That's perfect. That's the computer? Yeah. Yeah, because I'm going to play it from the computer. Oh, you recorded it too? The Martin Luther King joint. Okay. Oh, it's working. Well, I use the other computer. So when you're done, we can just do it straight from the computer. Give me a moment. I'm about to upload this. It's about a minute. So just give me a moment. Beautiful. So now let's put this here. So you want to play the 5-minute one or the 2-minute one? I'll give him 5 minutes. It's one of his days. Just in case somebody added their own promotion. Believe in yourself and believe that you're somebody. So to add spice to it, to what you do, every time you do it, you should end it with a lecture like this. Or like Dr. Clark saying some real shit. Okay. Can do this for. Say peace. No Lincolnian Emancipation Proclamation can do this for us. No Smithsonian or Johnsonian Civil Rights Bill can do this for us. If the Negro is to be free, he must move down into the inner resources of his own soul. Give me a second. And sign with a pen and ink of self-assertive manhood his own emancipation. First and foremost, let me shout out CommitFlix.com. Y'all see it in the background. My Big O Live family. Let me see how y'all looking over here. Cool. Alright, so today is regarded as Dr. Martin Luther King Day. And as most days, I'm here to give y'all a little bit of the good word. You feel me? We still in our post-traumatic slave syndrome. So we're going to draw that up out you real quick. And we got a little something special for you today. We might have some words from a guest, but if not, we definitely going to hear some words of Dr. King at the end of this. So stay tuned, send me some love, and give me some feedback. Share. You know what I mean? Don't cost nothing to share, man. Peace. All right, so we're going to start off with Tuskegee. Seemingly in the tradition of J. Marion Sims, the United States government decided it was okay to run medical experiments on African Americans. From 1932 to 1972, the U.S. Public Health Service used 399 African American men who were suffering from syphilis as human laboratory animals in the medical experiment
that became known as the Tuskegee Syphilis Study. The majority of the men were illiterate sharecroppers from Alabama who came to Tuskegee complaining of fatigue. Contrary to popular belief, the government did not give these men syphilis. They already had contracted it when they became, pardon me, when it, contrary to popular belief, the government did not give these men syphilis. They already had contracted it when they came to the institute. After tests were run, they were told by doctors and nurses, people they were taught to trust, that we were being treated for a blood disorder. In fact, they were not being treated at all. They were mercilessly left to degenerate with the afflictions of syphilis, paralysis, tumors, blindness, and insanity, inevitably resulting in death for many. It is detestable that doctors and institutions, both black and white, participated in this experiment. However, the fact that the United States government oversaw such an experiment is inexcusable and barbaric. Pardon me. More than 100 of the men died from syphilis during the study. A number of the unwitting participants passed the disease on to their spouses, and in a few cases, their pregnant spouses in turn passed it on to their unborn infants. The study was halted in 1972 only after a former public health service worker blew the whistle on the project. It's amazing to think that the study. Let me cut this long. There you go. There we go. Where was I? Okay, so the study was halted in 1972 only after a former public health service worker blew the whistle on the project. It's amazing to think that the study might still have gone on until the last participant died almost 30 years later, had it not been for that one public health service worker with a conscience. The study was purported to be a way of learning what effect syphilis had on the body. Unfortunately, this could only be determined post-mortem. In 1947, only 15 years after the experiment began, penicillin was discovered to be an effective cure for the disease. It was still withheld from the men for the next 25 years. Lynching, razing homes and business, and medical experimentation. Imagine of the atrocities described above to your husband, or wife, child, parent, sister, or brother, or perhaps your best friend. How would you handle it? It has been estimated that between 1866 and 1955, more than 10,000 African American men, women, and children have been lynched. Many thousands more have been murdered by other means, and untold numbers of women have been brutalized and raped. Add to this the tens of thousands who received beatings at the hands of whites, in many cases handed out by the police. And it's easy to see that at the end of slavery, that did not mean the end of trauma for Black people. Again, we have discussed only the physical violence visited upon these people. What about the psychological violence? What must it be like living in a community where your life is in jeopardy on a daily basis, where you have to shuffle to survive, where your dignity and pride are assaulted at every turn? What must it have been like being treated as a third-rate citizen in a seemingly first-rate society, a society whose benefits you are consistently denied access to? In search of civil rights, the crimes continue. 100 years after the emancipation, civil rights became a reality. More or less, today Jim Crow is the thing of the past. Well, mostly. Lynchings are rare, but they happen all the time, every year, and they haven't stopped. Where was I? Over. Many fewer Black women and young children are being physically brutalized. The majority of us have the right and the freedom to vote, so everything is fine, right? Racism is dead. The playing field has been leveled. I cannot count the number of times I've heard white people as well as Black people argue race is no longer an issue in this country. After all, slavery ended over 150 years ago, and Blacks have had their civil rights for over 50 years. Stop making excuses. It's time to move on. Oh, if it were only so. I was born in 1957 to Oscar and Nellie DeGroy, both of who were born and raised in Louisiana. My parents left Louisiana because they did not want their children to experience the discrimination and hardship they had endured. They knew they would raise us to be proud and stand up for ourselves, to insist on being treated fairly and respectfully for all the same reasons. They knew our lives would be in danger if they remained in the South. I was born at a time when change was moving like a raging fire. laying waste to antiquated beliefs and doctrines. The turbulent 60s bring up fresh recollections for me of war, protests, riots, assassinations, and a movement for civil rights. And my first memory of the 1965 Watts riots, I was 7 years old, riding in the car with my family. We were coming home from a family gathering. Everyone was talking and laughing when suddenly the car slowed down and everything got quiet. I remember seeing fires all around us, overturned cars, broken windows, and people running out of stores with food, clothing, and televisions. Then a man ran up and peered into the window of our car as if he were looking for someone. He looked carefully at each of us. He then turned and yelled out the words, "Black blood," to a crowd of black people standing behind him holding baseball bats and pipes. He then motioned to my father to move along. It all seemed surreal. I couldn't recognize my neighborhood anymore. There was a flurry of emotions flowing through me, a mixture of fear and awe. There were sirens going off in every direction. My father turned a corner onto 55th Street. Our house was in the middle of the block. All of our neighbors were outside, standing on their porches and in their yards, looking in the direction of the fires and the mayhem. There was a strange ambivalence about the riots that everyone seemed to be caught up in. I remember hearing older people say things like, "It's a damn shame that it had to come to this for white folks to learn they can't keep treating people like they're less than them." Civil rights and gaining equality. But wasn't the Civil Rights Act of 1964 supposed to make things right? Didn't it eliminate discrimination based on race, color, creed, or national origin? Unfortunately, the crime here is that civil rights legislation fell significantly short of its intent to level the playing field and guarantee equality and justice for all. Robert Wesley says it best. A crucial but seldom considered defect of all civil rights legislation is the fact that it needs to be administered and enforced. Many blacks and whites, too, appear to be under some delusion that once Congress passes civil rights legislation, blacks are protected from discrimination and white racism. Nothing could be further from the truth, as the history of black Reconstruction clearly shows. Every measure passed by Congress during Reconstruction for the social and political equality of blacks, with the possible exception of the 13th Amendment, was subverted or made null and void before the turn of the century. Andrew Hacker, in The Two Nations, Black and White, Separate, Hostile, Unequal assesses the social condition of America, identifying the entrenched separatism that is more often a rule than exception. Black Americans are Americans, yet they still subsist as aliens in the only land they know. Blacks must endure segregation that is far from freely chosen. So America may be seen as two separate nations. Of course, there are places where the races mingle, yet in most significant respects, the separation is pervasive and penetrating. As a social and human division, it surpasses all others, even gender, in intensity and subordination. Hacker argues that whites who embrace America as a whites that embrace America as a nation fail to feel in any way responsible for its condition. They deem themselves to be above oppressing or holding down their fellow black citizens. On the contrary, they believe that blacks have oftentimes been given unfair advantages. They are oblivious to any privilege that being born white is given them. Hacker identifies the deep-seated and often unconscious nature of racism that is embedded in the psyche of Americans, which reflects itself in its beliefs of superiority and inferiority today. America is inherently a white country in character, in structure, in culture. Needless to say, Black Americans create lives of their own, yet as people, they face boundaries and construction set by the white majority. With that, I'm going to go ahead and let the words of Dr. King take us on out. I hope your today is great, your tomorrow is greater, and may fortune favor you wherever you follow.
I come here tonight and plead with you. Believe in yourself and believe that you're somebody. I said to the group last night, nobody else can do this for us. No document can do this for us.
You was with money.
No Lincolnian Emancipation Proclamation can do this for us. No Jeffersonian or Johnsonian Civil Rights Bill can do this for us. If the Negro is to be free, he must move down into the inner resources of his own soul and sign with the pen and ink of self-assertive manhood his own Emancipation Proclamation. Don't let anybody take your manhood. proud of our heritage. As somebody said earlier tonight, we don't have anything to be ashamed of. Somebody told a lie one day. They couched it in language. They made everything black, ugly, and evil. Look in your dictionary and see the synonyms of the word black. It's always something degrading and low and sinister. Look at the word white. It's always something pure, high, and clean. But I want to get the language right tonight. I want to get the language so right that everybody here will cry out, yes, I'm black, I'm proud of it, I'm black and beautiful.
With that, I'm gonna say peace, bro. You want to say anything? Are you good?
Peace and love.
Peace and love. One.
Without sanctuary.
Oh, my apologies. I thought I ended this.
Without sanctuary.